Sicario, Day of the Soldado, or just simply Soldado, is a very different film to its predecessor Sicario. Both films deal with themes of institutional corruption and the cyclical nature of violence, but there's a fundamental difference between the two, and that's in how they position us as the audience within their narratives. It changes everything, especially when it comes to how effectively each film's core ideas and messages actually land. And it starts with Kate Mesa. Experiencing the story through Kate makes Sicario what it is, particularly during the quieter moments of the film, such as the boardroom scene, the briefing scene, and the bus station scene. These sequences aren't just visually fascinating, they're restrained in their storytelling, and that restraint forces us to become active participants as opposed to passive viewers. Compositions take care to frame Kate in ways that keep her isolated and alienated. Dialogue is minimal, cryptic, and withholds the truth.
Where is he?
Oh, he's in the El Paso area.
It's these writing and filmmaking choices that establish the film's conflict, hierarchy, and crucially, mystery.
Okay.
And elevate Sicario into a far more compelling piece of cinema. During the boardroom scene, for instance, not only are we made to feel Kate's isolation and powerlessness in the dialogue.
Are you married?
Am I married?
Cinematography and blocking, we leave the scene asking the same questions as her. Who is Matt Graver? Is anything he says true? What is Kate really getting herself into here?
Think very hard before you respond.
Some questions are answered, but like Kate, we're left needing more. And that's the mark of good, layered, immersive storytelling. And the result is that through Kate, Sicario forces us to inhabit uncertainty, narratively, legally, and morally. Kate's perspective grounds us in what is legal, which allows us to recognize just how far Graver and his team are operating outside of it. And it's this that opens the door for us to question whether these actions are moral or even effective.
Yeah, that was fucking illegal. You want to start a war? You're a fucking spook.
The film doesn't pass judgment. It presents a system where morality, legality, and necessity are constantly at odds.
You getting the vibe that we're winning?
No.
And leaves us to reconcile that ourselves, which is why there are so many ways to interpret Sicario's narrative and what it's trying to say. Even the cartel isn't reduced to something purely monstrous. Villeneuve deliberately humanizes its characters, giving just enough dimension to complicate our response to them. We see this with Silvio, where the glimpses of his quiet family life, and this line,
Tengo un hijo.
turn this moment from a generic action beat into a continuation of the film's core themes. We see it in the determined resistance of the cartel members at the border crossing, raising arms in a moment of utter one-sided hopelessness, giving the moment more nuance rather than reducing it to pure villainy. And of course, we see it with Fausto Alarcón, the cartel executioner responsible for Alejandro's transformation from law-abiding family man to ruthless Sicario, whom we only ever get to know as a caring father and husband. It's this moral tension in Sicario that makes it such a powerful picture of moral and legal ambiguity. It doesn't tell us what to think so much as it constructs a moral framework that forces us to decide. And that is where Soldado changes things. It removes that framework, and in doing so, strips away the uncertainty, and with it, the need for us to think at all. What we end up with isn't just a different story, it's a fundamentally different experience. Soldado presents its story's core corruption at face value.
You want to see this thing through? I'm gonna have to get dirty.
And trades moral tension for spectacle. But it's the moral tension that gives the violence in Sicario its weight.
What the fuck are we doing?
Every act of violence is contextualized, given perspective, consequence, and reaction, so that we're not just witnessing them, we're morally positioned to confront them. In Soldado, that context is largely absent. Violence is presented more directly, without the same emphasis on consequence, reaction, or moral ambiguity. We see it in the opening bombing, where the deaths of a mother and child are used to establish stakes, but without the same emotional or narrative grounding that we would have had in Sicario. We see it in Alejandro's execution of this nameless guy, which is played less as a moral turning point accented by reaction shots and genuine emotion and consequence, but instead as a simple continuation of his mythos and ruthlessness. And we see it in the helicopter rescue towards the end, where the violence is one-sided and the cartel members aren't given anywhere near the same humanistic treatment as they are in Sicario, where their actions, even though unquestionably grim, are balanced with moments that complicate our perspective. In Soldado, by contrast, they're depicted one-dimensionally, as purely evil with very little nuance or redeemable qualities. So here, even as the helicopters close in, we're never permitted to feel their fear or desperation, something that could have brought a new dimension to both them and the sequence as a whole. Instead, the sequence is framed mostly from a distance, and brutality takes the spotlight, stripping the moment of the ambiguity and emotion that made similar ones in Sicario so unsettling and morally complicated. And the result is that Soldado gives us something simpler, clearer, and ultimately far less impactful. And this isn't just a narrative difference, it's embedded in the filmmaking itself. Have a closer look at how each film handles its interrogation scene. In Soldado, it's a very simple scene in terms of its blocking, camera work, and other compositional choices. There isn't nearly as much storytelling embedded within the images themselves compared to Sicario. It's mostly constructed in a shot-reverse shot style, in very dark, moody lighting. Other than this shot of Graver's Crocs, which functions as both a nice callback to his flip-flops in Sicario and a reinforcement of his nonchalant, relaxed demeanour, the cinematography does little to extend the meaning of the scene beyond what's being said.
No rules today, sport.
In Sicario, things are very different. The scene is not only briefer, but it's punctuated by some seriously impressive visual storytelling. The water jug, forcing choosing to leave the room,
I'm gonna step out.
his decision to switch the camera off on his way out, and this slow zoom descending towards the drain pipe. We're shown that something illegal is about to take place instead of being told, and by letting the images do the heavy lifting, it gives more weight to the atmosphere and forces us to sit in the silence and feel the tension in the room far more effectively. And this lean, intentional visual storytelling runs throughout the scene. Similar to shots all throughout Sicario, Villeneuve and his cinematographer, the legendary Roger Deakins, use every dimension of the frame to tell their story. Along the y-axis, blocking reinforces power dynamics, reminding us who holds control, and combined with shots like this, how far we're descending into the illegal. To be fair, Soldado does use a similar framing at one point, but here, the proximity to the camera, the low angle, and the cramped framing of Guillermo make the claustrophobia and power imbalance far more tangible. Along the Z-axis, Villeneuve and Deakins use depth to keep the focus where it matters. Forcing switching off the camera becomes a subtle background beat rather than an entirely separate shot, which it could easily have been. It's an important detail for communicating the scene's illicit nature, but Villeneuve and Deakins don't pull us away to show it. They keep us with Alejandro because he's the dominant force in the room. It's his presence and intensity that drive the emotion and story of the scene. So that's where they keep us, and yet they still find a way to include other details like this that make the scene whole. We see something similar in the framing here, where Graver is removed to the background, fully aware but also relaxed and detached. And it's shots like this that quietly tell the full story in Sicario. The power of Graver and his operation, how relaxed he and his men are with what they're doing, and how much humanity they're willing to sacrifice to get the job done. None of these filmmaking decisions are flashy or over the top, but together they give this moment a greater dimension. A sense of intimacy, weight, and atmosphere that elevate this interrogation sequence into something far beyond what's happening on the surface. And above all, through what happens in this room and what happens before it.
What the fuck are we doing?
These decisions force us to confront the key question the film keeps asking but never explicitly answers. Are these men actually the good guys? That's what's missing in Soldado's scene. It doesn't hinge on involving us as the audience and using the scene to hint at the film's deeper themes of corruption. There's no implicit sense of illegality being conveyed through the images, no camera being turned off, no atmospheric build-up or sense of impending dread. We're not forced to imagine the violence, which always makes it worse. Instead, it's explicit. We're told exactly which side of the line Graver stands on.
This is Africa. I can do whatever the fuck I want here.
And the entire scene hinges on an act of violence. An act that's presented in a very different way to how it was handled at the end of Sicario. A scene also involving a defenseless but clearly bad person being forced to sit through the death of his family. Here though, the moment is underpinned by pure emotion from both sides of the table. And we're not shown the result of the scene's violence until well after we've been forced to feel its impact. Even knowing what this man has done to Alejandro, it makes the moment feel visceral and morally complex. In Soldado, we witness this man's loss, but it feels impersonal. There's no build-up, no connection to the family, and all we get of his reaction is this. It's not ineffective, but it lacks the emotional weight of seeing that reaction play out on his face. Consequently, there's almost no emotional or moral investment on our side. And that pretty much sums up Soldado. It just doesn't engage with the same legal and moral dimensions that Sicario does, and it's a far shallower experience for it. Lines like this,
"Dirty is exactly why you're here,"
are the sort of lines that sound cool, but they don't really carry anything with them beyond their one single utterance. They don't add anything to the story other than style, and style isn't what made Sicario great. Put another way, when Denis Villeneuve's favourite scene from Sicario is this one,
they will be beyond law and they will do something that is illegal, and so on, and that I thought was pretty cinematic.
And Roger Deakins' favourite sequence is this one.
You know, for me, the strongest scene in the whole of Sicario is at the end in the kitchen, where it's just Benicio and Emily.
Largely because of how much meaning and thematic complexity they bring to the film. It really does seem like the team behind Soldado missed something when they chose to steer their film in the direction of action set pieces and pure spectacle. And that's really the key difference. Sicario's power doesn't come from its violence, it comes from the moments around it, the conversations, the silences, the uncertainty, the details that force us to sit with what the film is really saying. The violence is simply a release, and even then, it's framed in a way with something meaningful to say. In Soldado, those moments are largely absent. When things slow down, it feels more like a bridge between set pieces than true substance. Still, to be fair, it does occasionally gesture towards this. Alejandro's interaction with the deaf man, for instance, hints at a more introspective, character-driven approach that does succeed in slowing things down and briefly reconnecting us with something more human. But moments like this are the exception, not the foundation in Soldado. And without that foundation, they simply don't carry the same weight. Because Sicario doesn't just depict a world of moral compromise, it makes you feel what it's like to live in one. Yes, it has its moments of violence, but it gives the violence a reason for being there. It gives it the genuine moral weight it deserves, positioning it in a way that reinforces the story's exploration of morality, illegality, and ultimately what it means to not just exist in the land of wolves, but survive there too. And that's what Soldado loses. It escalates the violence, but it abandons the perspective, the complexity, and the emotion-driven filmmaking decisions that gave that violence weight and meaning. And in doing so, it misses the point. But hopefully, if they do go ahead with this third installment there's been talk of, they'll remember exactly what it was that made Sicario such a powerful and special story. Thank you very much for watching.